this morning on the grandmothers of Christmas. These are the women mentioned in Matthew's genealogy. And this Sunday, we look at the story of Ruth. The story of Ruth reminds me of one of my favorite novels that I called novels. Title is A Prayer for Owen Meany. I first read this book in my senior year of high school. And the novel begins with the words of the character Johnny Wheelwright saying, "I am doomed to remember a boy with a wrecked voice, not because of his voice or because he was the smallest person I ever knew, or even because he was the instrument of my mother's death, but because he is the reason I believe in God. I am a Christian because of Owen Meany." This morning, we're going to enter into the biblical book of Ruth. And in this book, we find the story of Ruth, a Moabite, for whom the book is named. And it's also the story of her mother-in-law, Naomi. Now, I've taken these two stories and I've often wondered if, like Johnny Wheelwright, Naomi felt doomed when she heard Ruth say to her, "Do not press me to leave you or turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge, and your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." I've wondered if she felt doomed, thinking, why does my daughter-in-law have to come with me back home? Well, to find out if she does or not, let's listen to the story this morning as performed by our Grace Baptist Church Bluebell drama team on Zoom. This is a first. So we're thankful that they've taken this chance and they've worked together and they've brought us the story of Ruth. And so there'll be 4 different scenes, 4 or 5 different scenes. And in between each scene, I'm going to offer a few reflections or comments.
As we gather to celebrate the Feast of Shavuot, we also take a look at the life of Ruth, the great-grandmother of King David. Long ago, when the judges ruled Israel, the land of Canaan suffered a terrible famine. Elimelech, a prominent Jew from Bethlehem, took his wife, Naomi, and his 2 sons, Malon and Kilian, to the land of Moab to escape the famine. The family settled there, and the sons married Moabite women named Orpah and Ruth. Then tragedy struck. First, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and then both of her sons. Naomi was suddenly a widow. All she had left were her 2 bereaved daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth.
In Moab, Naomi heard how the Lord had come to the aid of his people in Israel, providing food for them. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living in Moab and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law,
"Back to your mother's home, and may the Lord show kindness to you, as you have shown it to your late husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you find rest in the home of another husband."
"We would rather go back with you to your people, Naomi."
No, return to your homes, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, but we must part ways.
At this, they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her.
Look, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her.
Don't urge me to leave you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me.
Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her she stopped urging her. The two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. The whole town was so excited when they saw Naomi and Ruth.
Can this be Naomi?
So Naomi had returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning.
So this story is surprising in a few ways. The first surprise in the story of Ruth is that Naomi and her husband Elimelech, which means God is my king, immigrate to the country of Moab in search of greater economic security. Now, the Israelites were not fond of the Moabites, and that's why it's surprising. Second, after Naomi and Elimelech's sons, Malon, which means sick, and Chilion, which means spent or failing, after they marry, both sons and the father die, leaving no offspring to care for the woman of the family. The third surprise is that Ruth ignores Naomi's pleas to leave her. She utters those words we often may hear at a wedding. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. And so at the end of scene 1 in this story, we find Naomi and Ruth traveling back home to Bethlehem, which means the house of bread. Now the women of the house of bread recognized Naomi, and they exclaimed, "Is this Naomi? Could this be pleasant?" For Naomi's name means pleasant. They're not quite sure. She's a little older. She's haggard, and Naomi responds, "Don't call me Naomi anymore. Don't call me pleasant, but call me Mara. Call me bitter. For the Lord has marred me and dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." So Naomi is blaming God for her troubles. God seems absent. She believes maybe that God is punishing her and she's lost. And she has no idea what could happen to reverse her fortunes. She's doomed to live out her days in poverty, begging in the town square and gleaning in the fields, and she's doubly doomed as she feels responsible for her daughter-in-law, Ruth, another mouth to feed. She does not even acknowledge Ruth when she returns to Bethlehem. Perhaps, like Naomi, you've had moments in your life when you felt like she felt. Pockets of emptiness. Maybe you played by the rules, you went to school, you went to college, you started your career only to have your company downsize. Maybe you married your high school sweetheart and raised a family together only to have the marriage fall apart when the kids left for college. Maybe you worked hard all your life and saved money so you could travel and see the world with your spouse, but then the golden years were filled with health problems, or your golden years were experienced alone because your beloved left this world too soon. Or maybe we're all living through a pandemic. And like Naomi, we wonder, when will our fortunes be reversed? When will I recover from my spouse's death? When will my family be restored to wholeness? When will I experience redemption? You might wonder, when will that Uno card be played? You know the one that is called the reverse card. When will that reverse card be played and my life will be turned around? I think many of us can identify our own situation from time to time with Naomi's. We have pockets of emptiness that cannot be filled through our own efforts. But thankfully, Naomi's and our stories do not end with emptiness. Let's see what happens in scene 2, beginning with Ruth asking to go to the fields to glean from the barley harvest.
Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side from the clan of Elimelech, a man of prominent standing, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabitess, said to Naomi,
Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain, walking behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor.
Go ahead, my daughter.
So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in the field belonging to Boaz. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters.
Shalom, the Lord be with you.
Shalom Aleichem, the Lord bless you.
Who is that young woman?
She is the Moabitess who came back with Naomi. She asked me to let her glean and gather amongst the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went into the field and she has worked steadily from morning till now.
Then Boaz said to Ruth,
Don't go and glean in another field. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled.
At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground and exclaimed,
Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a woman from Moab, a foreigner?
I've been told all about what you have done for Naomi since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for the kindness you have shown to your mother-in-law. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge.
May I continue to find favor in your eyes too, my Lord. You have given me comfort and have spoken kindly to me, though I do not even have the standing of even one of the lowest servant girls.
at mealtime, Boaz said to her,
Come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine.
when she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men.
Even if she gathers among the sheaves, don't embarrass her. Rather, pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her.
So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she thrashed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to an ephah, about 3/5 of a bushel. She carried it back to town, where Naomi saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also gave her what she had left over from the meal she had eaten with Boaz that day.
Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you.
The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz.
Yahweh bless him. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living or the dead. Boaz is a close relative. He is one of our kinsman redeemers.
He even invited me to stay with his workers until they finish harvesting all his grain.
It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with his girls, because in someone else's field, you might be harmed.
Now the kinsman redeemer was the nearest of kin. He had the responsibility of redeeming his kinsman's lost opportunities. If a person was forced into slavery, his redeemer purchased his freedom. When debt threatened to overwhelm him, the kinsman stepped in to redeem his homestead and let his family live. If a family member died without an heir, the kinsman married the widow and reared a son to hand down his name. So Ruth stayed close to the servant girls of Boaz and gleaned until the barley and wheat harvests were finished. She continued to live with her mother-in-law, Naomi.
This encounter in scene 2 between Ruth and Boaz raises an important question. It's a theological question. Is this a coincidence or divine providence? Is it a coincidence that Ruth gleans in the field of Boaz, or is it divine providence? That he treats her well. For at the end of the first day, as we heard, Ruth comes home with buckets of grain, and it becomes obvious to her mother-in-law, Naomi, that Boaz has lost his business sense, and perhaps there's a little something happening between Boaz and Ruth. Pleasant, bitterness, has a fleeting moment of hope. Could Boaz be their ticket out of destitution? could he reverse our fortunes and recover our land and restore us to fullness. For 7 weeks from the barley harvest to the wheat harvest, Ruth returns to the fields again and again, and she gleans, but nothing happens. The moment of hope is gone. Bitterness sets in for the long winter, and she is left alone once again. But then, much like another one of our grandmothers of Christmas, Naomi decides to take matters into her own hands. She sits her daughter-in-law Ruth down for a woman-to-woman talk. And as you listen to the story, you might want to consider these theological questions. Do the things of God happen at times by conspiracy and mischievousness? Can God work in ways that we might consider scandalous? Let's find out in scene 3.
Naomi said to her,
My daughter, shouldn't I try to find a home for you, one where you will be well provided for? Is not Boaz a kinsman of ours? Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash and perfume yourself and put on your best clothes. Then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do next.
Yes, Naomi, I will do as you say.
So she went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking, and when he was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth quietly approached him, uncovered his feet, and laid down. In the middle of the night, something startled him. As he turned, he discovered her lying at his feet.
Who are you?
I am your servant, Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer to me.
May Hashem, blessed be his name, bless you, my daughter. This is a great kindness that you have shown me. Don't be afraid. I will do all that you've asked. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Although I am near of kin, there is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I, who is entitled to marry you. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem you, then good, let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will redeem you and take you as my wife. Lie here until morning.
So she laid at his feet until morning.
Don't let it be known that you came to the threshing floor. Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out.
When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and gave it back to her. Then he went to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked her,
How did it go, my daughter?
He told me I had shown him great kindness. He also said there was a kinsman redeemer nearer than he who might be willing to marry me. And he said, if not, then he would. He gave me these 6 measures of barley and told me not to come back to you empty-handed.
Be patient, my daughter. Boaz will not rest until the matter is settled today.
Just in case you haven't caught what's going on here, you need to be aware that there's quite a few words here that either have an innocent or suggestive meaning. Here's the basic translation. Ruth came down to the threshing floor, uncovered Boaz's lower body, and slept with him. When Ruth asks Boaz to spread his cloak over her, it's an ancient way of saying, marry me. And I draw attention to this because it raises that question. Can God work in ways that we would consider scandalous? Can God work in ways that we would consider scandalous? Let's listen to the rest of the story to find out.
Boaz went out on the town gate and sat there. He waited until the kinsman redeemer he had mentioned came along.
Come over here, my friend, and sit down.
So the man came over and sat down. Boaz had also asked a minion, which are 10 elders of the town, to sit with him. Then he said to the kinsman redeemer,
Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, then do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you. But I am next in line.
I will redeem it.
On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain his name with his property.
I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own state. You redeem it yourself. I will not do it.
For the redemption and transfer of property become final, one party had to take off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was a method of legalizing transactions in Israel.
Buy it yourself. I removed my sandal.
Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth, the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife, in order to maintain his name with his property. His name will not disappear from among his family or from the town records. Today you are witnesses.
We are your witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. May you have standing in the land and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah.
So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son.
Praise be to the Lord, Naomi. Hashem has not left even you without a kinsman redeemer. May the child become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, Ruth, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to a son.
Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and cared for him.
Naomi has a grandson through Ruth and Boaz. His name is Obed.
Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. And Jesse was the father of David, who became king over all of Israel.
I want to thank the members of our drama team for putting that together. And as we reflect on the story of Ruth, and we think about the questions that we've pondered this morning through that story, you know, Naomi thought God was absent. That God was absent from her life when she returned to Bethlehem. But the story tells us and testifies and witnesses that God was not absent. God was silently working salvation, silently bringing about redemption for Naomi, turning bitterness back into pleasant. The story of Ruth is a parable of grace and redemption. And isn't that God's story? Isn't that the Christmas story? Jesus was born to save his people from their sins, and he was named Emmanuel. God is with us. God is with us and comes to redeem us. And the question is are we open to God's redemption as God silently works salvation in our lives? sometimes, oftentimes, through the most unlikely people. How may we open ourselves to God's redemption? Let's just take one more closer look at the story of Ruth. Now, when Naomi hatches her plan in chapter 3, she is hopeless. She takes matters into her own hands, not for her own sake, but for Ruth's. She says, "My daughter, I need to seek some security for you so that it may be well with you." Naomi is not concerned about her state. She's kind of given up. She's concerned about Ruth. And so in response, Ruth does not only do what Naomi tells her to do, she does more than Naomi tells her to do. She doesn't wait for Boaz to tell her what to do. No, first she asks for his hand in marriage, saying, "Spread the corner of your garment over me." She asks for him then to act as a redeemer. And to act as a redeemer that he is qualified to be for the old widow Naomi. Naomi did not ask Ruth to do that, but Ruth took it upon herself, thinking of Naomi. It was her loyalty, her faithfulness to her mother-in-law that God acted through. This story, the main theme is loyalty, faithfulness. And that is why the woman praises Ruth and says, "You are better to Naomi than 7 sons." What a statement of honor. In verse 11, Boaz agrees to marry Ruth. He also exhibits loyalty and faithfulness. And then in verse 13, he swears that one way or another, he will see to the recovery and the redemption of what was lost after the deaths of God is my king, sickness, and failing. Ruth wasn't looking out just for herself. She is also looking out for her mother-in-law. And Boaz understands this. He says, "May you be blessed by the Lord. This last instance of your loyalty is better than the first," meaning her loyalty and concern for Naomi now is better than when she first uttered those words, "Where you go, I will go." They were words that Naomi did not want to hear. And yet God was working through those words, through that loyalty. And so God silently brings redemption through the most unlikely person, through Ruth, a widow, a foreigner, an immigrant. That's God's way. God often chooses the other to help carry out his redemptive purposes in our world. And so this morning I ask, once again, are you open to God's redemption? Can you identify with Naomi, trying to secure the lives of others, as she was with her daughter-in-laws, but also ourselves in need of redemption? May we be open to the other. And may we seek to be open to the foolish things, the weak things, and the things that are not. Those people that God has surprisingly chosen to bring about redemption. For it's because of them, it's because of Ruth, that Naomi has a child to lay in her lap, a child who became the grandfather of King David and one of Jesus's grandfathers. So Naomi had Ruth. In a prayer for Owen Meany, Johnny had Owen. Who might God silently be working through to bring redemption to your life? The good news is that God silently works. Through Ruth, God silently worked through a poor young woman to give birth to a Savior, that we, you and me, might be redeemed. The question, will you receive the silent work of God in your life today? Amen.